Now this archetype will truly be a massacre of a design. We're taking a look at another Duel Monsters era archetype, that being the Guardian archetype used by Raphael, which was one of Zdoma's swords in the ever so wonderful season 4 filler arc of the Duel Monsters anime. And yeah, this archetype is it's something. You know, let's just start. Anyway, first off we have our first and only level 3 monster of the archetype, Guardian Elma. This is, like I said, a level 3 fairy with 1300 attack and 1200 defense. And check this out. Cannot be summoned unless you control a face-up butterfly dagger Elma. When this card is normal or special summoned, you can target one appropriate equip spell in your graveyard, equip that target to this card. Okay, so that's somewhat of a lot of information to take in at once. First of all, the bizarre summoning condition. All of the Guardian, well, most of the Guardian monsters, have the effect that they cannot be summoned in any way or shape or form unless you control their appropriate equip spell, which they're based on. And in terms of Guardian Elma, it's the Butterfly Dagger Elma, which, mind you, you cannot even play in at the moment because it's currently banned. So you can't even play Elma unless you're planning on setting her and having her be flipped up on attacks or something. Anyway, Butterfly Dagger Elma is an equip spell which allows the equipped monster to gain 300 attack, and when it is destroyed and sent to the graveyard while equipped, you can return this card to the hand. And yeah, you can pretty much see how this could basically break the game in half if you equip it on something like Gear 3DR and Knight, and then you'll be able to infinitely equip and re-equip the card onto it, and then generate a whole bunch of spell counters for stuff like Royal Magical Library and all the other useful cards which employ spell counters. So yeah, like I said, Elma is not the worst of their cards since it allows you to recycle some equips, which the archetype really needs, as we'll see later on. But due to the fact that her own archetypal equip spell is banned and thus Elma is unplayable, you can only cheat her out onto the field with something like a wild monster appears, but if you do that, then the effect won't activate, so she might as well be a vanilla at this point. So yeah, if Butterfly Dagger Elma by any chance leaves the ban list, I'd say run a couple of Elmas, so yeah. Anyway, next up we have our first level 4 Guardian Chaos. This is level 4 with 1000 attack and 1800 defense, and cannot be summoned unless you control a face-up Rod of Silence Chaos. This card is unaffected by spell effects and cannot be targeted for attacks, but does not prevent your opponent from attacking directly. Not sure why they would want to use stuff like Dark Hole or Lightning Vortex or something like that to get rid of this thing, just because you can use literally any other monster effect to get rid of her, or just simply attack over it since she cannot be attacked for some reason. And yeah, she's basically a female version of Legendary Fisherman, which is always unaffected by spell cards. Now for her equip spell, Rod of Silence Chaos, gives the equipped monster 500 defense this time for some reason, and negates the other spell effects that target the equipped monster, and if you do, destroy that spell card. Pretty underwhelming at first, but this actually turns quite a few archetypes into resource generating machines, most notably Vylons with a Vylon element, and yeah, I'll be talking about Vylons eventually, since they did appear in the anime and were used by a known duelist. So yeah, I'll leave it until that video to talk about Rod of Silence some more. But in terms of the actual Guardian quality, it's nothing too amazing, because as you can see from now that we're 2 sets of cards in, the theme of Guardian cards and their monsters is for the equips to give other monsters in the archetype similar effects to the Guardians they're based around. So yeah. And now we move on to our other level 4, Guardian Bow. This one cannot be summoned unless you control a Wicked Breaking Flamberge Bow. And when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, it gains 1000 attack and negate the effects of monsters destroyed by battle with this card. This is actually a very nice effect, but it's put on top of a monster with 800 base attack, which is not going to run over anything relevant unless you bump it with other equips. And when it destroys something by battle for the first time, it does become a okay level 4 beatstick, which will continue to grow even stronger if it continues to destroy something by battle. And now for its equip, which is actually a very good equip spell, Wicked Breaking Flamberge Bow, which allows you to send one card from your hand to the graveyard and target one monster on the field and equip it with this card. And it gains 500 attack, negate the effects of the opponent's monsters destroyed by the battle with the monster. And yeah, unlike its monster counterpart, it's much more worth running because it's a lot easier to set up. The attack boost isn't nearly as impressive and it requires a discard in order to be activated, which is kind of dumb in my opinion. But it gives you the exact same effect as Guardian Bow without the attack boosting effect after it destroys something, but still, negating stuff after battle destruction is very good nowadays, so you might as well treat yourself to 2 or 3 of these. But again, the main problem with the Guardian cards is you cannot summon them at all, I repeat, if you do not control their equip spells, and most of the time you'll have to be forced to run stuff like Fairy Tales Rella and or equip the set equip spells onto the opponent's monsters just to be able to summon your own, which is very bad archetype design in my opinion. It's gonna reflect in the grading as well. But enough about that for now. Let's go take a look at our next monster, which is Guardian Seal. Another level 4 and cannot be summoned unless you control a face-up shooting Starboard Seal. This one allows you to send one equip spell from your you control to the that is equipped to this card to the graveyard to target one monster your opponent controls and destroy it. And shooting Starboard Seal's effect is that the equipped monster loses 1000 attack, but it can attack your opponent directly. This one has approximately 2 uses I can think of. Either to turn a bigger beatstick into a very potent direct attacker, or to equip it onto the opponent's monster in order to severely weaken it by 1000 attack. And as for Guardian Seal's actual effect, it's okay-ish considering its attack value and the type of equip spell it pilots. So yeah. In terms of their level 4 lineups, right next to Baou, it's one of their better cards. Next up, we move on to the final level 4, which is not a traditional Guardian monster since it's actually was actually released a bit later in terms to be the support card for the archetype. And that is Arsenal Summoner, which is a level 4 spellcaster with a flip effect to add one Guardian card from your deck to your hand, except the one the localization team failed to translate properly. So anyway, you can basically add any member of the monster lineup from the archetype into your hand. However, despite the Konami's best efforts to thoroughly restrict what this card can search out, as you can see from the massive except part of the text, this card can still search other stuff with Guardian in its name, such as Kwakimeru Guardian, Guardian Sphinx, Dimension Guardian, Gate Guardian, well, any other stuff which might have Guardian in the name. And yeah, it also searches out those, but you do not tend to run those as well. Well, Dimension Guardian is actually a really good trap card, so there's some sort of versatility here if it's not really... Anyway, yeah, it's also their only source of consistency, so you might just treat yourself to 3 of these, so yeah. Alright, next up we have our first level 5, which is Guardian Trice. This is a Thunder type monster for some reason. Has 1900 attack and cannot be summoned unless you control a face-up twin Swords of Flashing Light Trice. And when this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, special summon the monster from the graveyard that was used for its tribute summon. Okay, so this one is the worst Guardian by far, simply because of the following. First of all, it has 1900 attack on a level 5 monster, which is not worth tributing for like ever. And not to mention, if it dies by any means, well, first of all, it needs to get destroyed specifically. You can special summon the monster that was used to tribute it, and if it happens to be a guardian, you cannot summon it if you do not control its equip spell. If you still do not control its equip spells, which is kind of dumb. And in order to summon it, you'll most likely be tributing something which is equipped with Twin Swords of Flashing Light Trice, which is our next equip spell. And right next to Baou, it's the best Guardian equip spell, and here's why. It allows you to send one card from your hand to the graveyard to activate it, and the equipped monster loses 500 attack, but it can make a second attack during each battle phase, which is nothing to scoff at, since you can actually equip it onto a bigger beat stick, which does not mind having 500 attack scratched off of it, and so it can attack twice. So yeah. Anyway, Twin Swords are actually a very good card, so you might as well treat yourself to some of them. But not too much, since it actually requires a discard, which is something Guardians can hardly afford, so yeah. And next up we have our final level 5, which is Guardian Growl. Cannot be summoned unless you control a face-up Gravity Axe Growl, and if this card is the only card in your hand, you can special summon it from your hand. And yeah, this is actually pretty legit. A level 5 with 2500 attack, which is actually really beefy for a level 5. And if you happen to have Gravity Axe Growl on the field, you can basically special summon this, of course, if it's the only card in your hand. But the problem lies in the following, that Gravity Axe Growl is pretty much garbage. The equipped monster gains 500 attack, and monsters your opponent controls cannot change their battle positions, because that's what's gonna make a card all in freaking battle position prevention. So yeah, you basically run this out of obligation, not out of personal choice, because Guardian Growl is one of the better guardians. So yeah. And now we move on to the last bunch of cards, which were made a lot later than the previous cards, because they were made to vastly improve the archetype, and here's how. First of which we have the level 8 Guardian Eatos, which has 2500 attack and 2000 defense, and if you have no monsters in your graveyard, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can send one of your equipped spells equipped to this card to the graveyard, and target up to 3 monsters in your opponent's graveyard, banish those targets, and if you do, this card gains 500 attack for each monster banished by this effect until the end of this turn. Always run 3 and never any less. The fact that this card has such an amazing special summoning condition for this archetype is phenomenal, since if you open up with 2 or 3 of these, you can easily make a rank 8 or edge to close to an OTK. Not to mention it's a level 8 monster, so trade-in is also an option. So yeah, this is a very legit monster, and it does not require its equip spell in order to be present on the field. However, it does have its equip spell, which is Celestial Sword Eatos, which is for some reason always treated as a Noble Arms card, and it does not help either of the archetypes, spoiler warning, so yeah. Anyway, the equipped monster gains 500 attack, and when this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can target one Guardian Eatos you control, and it gains 500 attack for each banished monster. Thematically it makes sense, but there is absolutely one major problem with this card, and that is that this card says when this card is sent from the from the field to the graveyard, instead of if this card is sent to the graveyard, which, if you remember Eatos' effect, because of this pain in the ass of the design, the card will actually miss timing when used with Eatos, so you cannot use both effects in conjunction with each other to turn Eatos into a massive beat stick. So yeah, it's pretty bad in those terms, but you can run 1 or 2 of these along with the Eatos to ensure some bigger damage values. So yeah. And now we move on to their final monster, which is Guardian Dreadscythe, which is another level 8 with 2500 attack and 2000 defense, same stats as Eatos. It's a fiend monster this time, and cannot be normal summoned or set, and must be special summoned by its own effect, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. If a Guardian Eatos is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to your graveyard, you can special summon this card from your hand, and when this card is special summoned, you can equip one Eatos Dreadscythe from your deck to this card. You cannot normal or special summon monsters, but you can normal set. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can send one card from your hand to the graveyard, and if you do, special summon this card from the graveyard. So essentially, if you happen to lose Guardian Eatos, you can replace it with this, and along with Eatos Dreadscythe, which is its equip spell, it gains 500 attack for each monster in both graveyards, and it can only be equipped to Guardian Dreadscythe. And even despite the fact that it actually contradicts the Eatos' focus on empty graveyards, there'll still be enough monsters in the graveyard for a fully powered Dreadscythe to end the duel in one swing, because this is modern Yu-Gi-Oh! We're talking about. An extensive graveyard setup is the name of the game, so yeah. And this is something Guardians truly can call a boss monster, even though it's in double quotation marks. And something that could have been considered a decent comeback option, but then again, we're talking about this single monster which can still be taken care of in the most anticlimactic way if possible, and not to mention her ignition effect only works from the hand when you are first summoning it, and not to mention a very specific monster needs to be destroyed in order to proc that effect. So yeah, run one or two of these if you really feel like it. And now we still have some cards to take a look at even after we've taken care of the entire monster lineup. First of which we have another equip spell, which is Power of the Guardians. If an attack is declared involving the equipped monster, place one spell counter on this card. The equipped monster gains 500 attack and defense for each spell counter on this card, and if the equipped monster would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can remove one spell counter from your field instead. It's okay, it's fine. Although I'm still slightly baffled that it's also a spell counter support card, because yeah, this card does actually fall under the Endymion and Prophecy archetype because of it, but it's not. It's actually a Guardian card because of the theming, and yeah, in terms of actual, in terms of every single Guardian equip, it's probably the best one because it's actually the most generic one. It can be equipped to literally any monster in the game, and it provides some decent attack values and some decent protection, so yeah, run 3 of these, it's really good. And their final card is only a part of the archetype due to its lore, and that is Guarded Treasure. It's a continuous spell which says that activate by discarding 5 cards. Draw 2 cards, and while this card is on the field, draw 2 cards instead of 1 for your normal draw during your draw phase. I get the idea, but the pain in the ass restriction is just that baffling, because this requires an ungodly amount of setup to be of any use, and you're going to be having a much easier time just setting this up with a Nightmare Unicorn instead. So yeah, waste of really amazing artwork in my opinion. And now we've come to the grading scale. In terms of consistency, their only booster of consistency is Arsenal Summoner, and their spell cards most of their spell cards can be searched out with Hidden Armory, but that's about as far as they go, so it's a complete 1 out of 3 in my opinion. Now in terms of power, their only really powerful monsters are Growl, Dreadscythe, and Eatos, but the latter 2 are rarely ever present on the field. Well, Eatos is present a lot on the field, but Dreadscythe is barely summoned. Eatos relies on banishing stuff in order to do anything relevant, and so does her equip spell. But then again, we're talking about a very specific combination of monsters and strategies, so that's a complete 1 out of 3 in my opinion. Comeback ability is something they almost could have pulled off with Dreadscythe, but then again, we're talking about a single monster which gets summoned when a certain single monster gets destroyed by a battle or card effect, and not to mention it only gets special summoned from the hand, so that's pretty much irrelevant here, so that's 1 out of 3. Now in terms of protection, Chaos protection from spell cards is as far as they go, and yeah, not anything can be done for that, so that's a 1 out of 3. And an archetype that cannot summon most of their monsters unless they control a specific set of cards, even though they can also be equipped to the opponent, is not deserving of anything more than a 1 out of 3 in terms of versatility. So yeah, it's that bad. These guys can literally lose to any kind of deck they go up against, because yeah, there are builds that focus on Eatos and Dreadscythe, and those are actually the best kinds of builds that those cards can flourish in. But those builds are certainly no dedicated Guardian decks. So yeah, this is a complete waste in terms of potential. So yeah, and those were Guardians, and I still cannot believe that they managed to carry over their aesthetics from the anime and their actual terrible summoning conditions. But hey, here we are, I guess. But I guess next time will be better, because we're going on to the 5Ds era with another very terrible archetype from the anime. So yeah, well, it's not as terrible as Guardians. That's actually a lot better, but it's still terrible enough. So yeah, you'll just have to wait and see until I actually get to that. So yeah. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned for more videos and updates. Comment, like, and subscribe. As usual, I'll upload the next video whenever I can. Be sure to check out my Patreon when you got the time. Maybe drop a few donations if you feel like it. And I'll see you all and have a good day. Peace.